What is your best joke? A termite walks into a bar and asks, is the bartender here? This is a good one. I love bar jokes. Two guys walk into a bar. The third one ducks. I don't get it. My grandfather has the heart of a lion and a lifetime ban from the zoo. I want to die peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather did, not screaming in terror like the passengers in his car. Stephen King once said something like, people think I'm this scary guy, but really I have the heart of a small boy. I keep it in a jar on my desk. Nice. Head is a similar one, which becomes better the older you become. I have the body of a 24-year-old, but it's in the freezer. A snake walks into a bar and the bartender asks how? A jumper cable walks into a bar, but the bartender says we don't serve jumper cables, get out. But the jumper cable has had a long day. He begs the barkeep to make an exception, and eventually he relents. All right, says the bartender, but don't try to start anything. A blind man walks into a bar, and a chair, and a table. A dyslexic man walks into a bra. What's the difference between a hippo and a zippo? One weighs a ton, and the other is a little lighter. What's the difference between an old public transit stop and a lobster with breast implants? Greater than one's. A crusty bus station, and the other is a busty crustacean. Less than. And you can probably find crabs near both. I love this one. I've also heard a similar concept spun into a pretty good riddle. You are in a canoe with 2 cigarettes and no matches, or fire starters of any kind. How do you have a smoke? You just toss 1 cigarette overboard, and the whole boat becomes 1 cigarette lighter. And the Lord said unto John, come forth and receive eternal life, but John came fifth and got a toaster. Moral, if you're not first you're last. Little baby Jesus. I had a dream where Jesus was a dirty old bum, and I was about to sock him in the face because, well, he's a dirty old bum, but then I thought, Terry's something special about him. Peter then had to eat the biscuit. How do you tell the gender of an ant? Throw it in water. If it sinks, it's girl ant, but if it floats, it's buoyant. You're posting that word after, helped me, thank you, mystery. Ants are amazing creatures. Did you know it's impossible for viruses to spread throughout an ant colony? Because of all the little antibodies. Man goes into a butcher's, asks, what happened to your assistant? Butcher replies, fired him. Man asks, why's that? Butcher replies, because he was putting his dick in the bacon slicer. Man asks, what did you do with the bacon slicer? Butcher replies, fired her as well. A manager walks into his office and tells one of his employees, I'm afraid it is bad news, somebody has to go, I need lay you or jack off. She replies, would you mind jacking off, I have a bit of a headache. I heard this as an Ollie, and Lena joke. Ole came home from work early one day looking real sad and Lena asks, Ole, you're home from work early, you look sad, what happened? Ole replies, Vel, I got caught with my ting into pickle slicer and they fired me. Oh no, says Lena, let me see your ting. So Ole shows her his ting and everything is fine. Ole, your ting is just fine, what happened to the pickle slicer? Ole says, oh Dave fired her too. An old Finnish man I worked with liked to tell this joke. One day, Lena decides to mow the whole lawn herself. When she is done, she is hot and sweaty. Lena, oh boy, I think I will have a beer at the bar. She goes to the bartender and says I would like a beer, please. The bartender says, okay, Anheuser-Busch? Lena, taken aback says, it's fine, and how's your pecker? What's the difference between an owl, a piano, and a fish? You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. What about the owl? Who? Edit, wow, this blew up. Lots of folks were quick to reference REO Speedwagon and the owl part seemed to go over their heads. Same thing happened in a meeting with work colleagues a month back. Love that this got many shares with wives, parents, siblings, and friends. Gotta give props to my brother for this joke. I'd swear he heard it, but it was the best clean joke I heard in years. Thanks for the awards, all. One of my friends insists that the real answer is you can't fuck a piano. 3 men were in a boat and had 4 cigarettes, but no lighter, so they threw 1 cigarette overboard, and the whole boat became a cigarette lighter. At first I thought they burned the boat. Same, I reread it thinking I missed a match somewhere. A man goes into the doctor and says, I think I have hearing problems, doctor. Can you describe the symptoms? Man, sure. Homer's fat and Marge has blue hair. I like that one. A man tells his friend that he thinks his wife's hearing is going bad. His friend told him to ask a question from far, get closer and ask again if she does not respond. So he goes home and try that. He asks what's for dinner? No response. So he got closer and asked again. He did this 2 more times and finally he heard from his wife for the 4th time, chicken. I had to take my mom's hearing aids for repair and this joke was told to me by a gentleman in their office. This was yesterday and I'd never heard that joke before. What's the difference between Dubai and Abu Dhabi? People from Dubai don't like the Flintstones, but people from Abu Dhabi do. Lol, sharing this with my Abu Dhabi peeps. I'm gonna share it with my Flintstone friends, BRB. What's even better? There is actually a bedrock land in the Warner Brothers world, Abu Dhabi theme park. What has 2 butts and kills people? An assassin. The opposite of assassin is dick out. Dick is the opposite of butt? Took me a second to realize you were talking about the spelling of the word. I thought you meant the butt of his rifle, and his actual buttocks. Why do Norwegian warships have a barcode on the side of them? So that they can Scandinavian. Where did Napoleon keep his armies? In his sleeveys. Where does a pirate keep his buccaneers? Under his boucan hat. What's a foot long and slippery? A slipper. Love it and it reminds me of another favorite. Where does a king keep his armies? / greater than his sleeveys. What's brown and sticky? A stick. What do you call a French guy wearing slippers? Philippe Philop. Someone found a hole in the nudist colony fence. Police are looking into it. Someone stole all the toilets from the police station. The police have nothing to go on. Wheels stolen from police cruisers. Police search tirelessly for suspects. While stealing a cement mixer, it tipped over, emptying its load onto the thieves. Police are looking for 2 hardened criminals. As Mickey and Minnie were before the judge in divorce court, the judge looked at Mickey and said, "Listen here, Mr. Mouse, I cannot grant you a divorce from Minnie." "But why not, Your Honor?" A stunned Mickey asked. "I have reviewed all the information you submitted to the court and I can find no evidence to support the allegation that she's crazy," explained the judge. "Your Honor," Mickey exclaimed, "I didn't say she was crazy, I said she was fucking goofy." A few years ago in Disneyland, my kid was taking picture with Goofy and I asked if they had heard the one about Minnie and Mickey in divorce court. Goofy immediately started shaking his head and waving his hands, trying to stay in character while also trying to stop me from telling the joke. I could hear laughter from within the costume. I'm guessing they probably heard it on a daily basis. To be sharp enough to get the characters to almost break, but not so edgy that you get escorted out of the park. Mario is in court for a traffic ticket and the judge orders him to pay $200. Mario: "What for, judge? It's a fine." Mario: "No, it's a not." Bear walks into a bar and says, "Can I have a Coke?" Bartender says, "What's with the big paws?" Bear says, "I don't know, I was born with them." When telling this one in a bar, I make the pause super long. People gotta wait for that punchline. There was a guy in high school that landed a date with the hottest girl in class for the prom. First, he went to pick out a suit, and had to wait in a huge line. Then he went and picked out flowers, and waited in a huge line. Even when he called around for limos, he had to wait and hold lines for all of them. Getting ready for after the prom, there was even a long line at the pharmacy. Finally the big night arrives and he takes his dance to the prom. When they get there, he asks his date if she wants him to get drink and she says yes. Much to his surprise, there was no punchline. Guy trying to get hired at a farm, and the farmer says, "Have you ever shoot a horse?" The guy says, "No, but once I told a donkey to fuck off." 2 prostitutes are hanging around together. Greater than one says, "Hey, you ever been picked up by the fuzz?" Less than. Greater than the other says, "No, but I've been swung around by the tits." Less than. Greater than / funnier if you know that fuzz is an old slang term for cops. Less than. Wait, has enough time passes that the fuzz has to be explained? My penis used to be in the Guinness Book of World Records, but then the librarian asked me to take it out and leave the building. 3 dwarves are sitting around bored AF and they decide to try and get in the Guinness Book of Records. The first one calls up, says, "I believe I have the smallest hands in the world," gives the measurements, then a few minutes later says, "I'm in, lads." The second one calls up, says, "I believe I have the smallest feet in the world," gives the measurements, then a few minutes later says, "I'm in, lads." The third one calls up, says, "I believe I have the smallest cock in the world," gives the measurements, then slams the phone down and shouts, "Who the fuck is /you/McShigs?" Fun fact, dwarves have completely ordinary penis sizes, it's not smaller. 2 fish in a tank, one turns to the other and says, "Do you know how to drive this thing?" Two soldiers in a tank, one turns to the other and says unintelligible underwater noises. This one works best if you have a glass of water handy. Two fish in a tank, one turns to the other and says, do you know how to drive this thing? The other says, holy shit, a talking fish. Yesterday I couldn't figure out whether someone was waving at me or the person behind me. In other news, I lost my lifeguard job. Not my original joke. Is there an original joke in this whole thread? I think it's a given. Why did the lifeguard let the hippie drown? He was too far out. 3 construction workers have lunch together on top of a tall building. The first one opens his lunchbox and goes, another tuna sandwich? I eat tuna sandwich every day. If I have to eat another tuna sandwich, I'm going to jump. The second one opens his lunchbox and also goes, man, another turkey club sandwich. I can't stand it anymore. If it's the same tomorrow, I'll jump. The third worker opens his lunchbox, sees a meatball sandwich, and like the others he says he'll jump if he has to eat another meatball sandwich. The next day the 3 men open their lunchboxes. The first one got a tuna sandwich. He writes a goodbye note and jumps. The second got a turkey club and does the same. The third sees he has a meatball sandwich and follows them. At the funeral the wives of the 3 men meet. The first one weeps and says, if only I had known, I would have made him something else. The second wife is angry and goes, he never told me he wanted something else. If he had just talked to me. They notice that the third wife just looks sort of confused, so they ask her what's wrong. She replies, I just don't get it. He always made his own lunch. Why don't they just trade lunches? Probably a less funny punchline. So they all traded lunches and went back to work. I'm dumb. I thought it was gonna end with meatball sub guy eating the tuna and turkey sandwiches. Double lunch, sweet. Edit, double not triple BC. Why would he eat the meatball sandwich he's tired of when there's other food? Not because I'm too dumb to count to 3. 3 men had a very late night drinking Guinness. They left in the early morning hours and each went to their home. The next day, they all met for an early pint, and compared notes about who was drunker the night before. The first guy claims that he was the drunkest, saying, I drove straight home and walked into the house. As soon as I got through the door, I blew chunks. The second guy said, you think that was drunk? Hell, I got into my car and wrapped it around the first tree I saw, and I don't even have insurance. The third guy proclaimed, damn, I was the drunkest by far. When I got home, I got into a big fight with my wife, knocked a candle over, and burned the whole house down. The room was silent for a moment. Then, the first guy spoke out again, listen, guys, I don't think you understand. Chunks is my dog. Do you like blowing bubbles? Sure. Well, great news, he's back in town. There's the Reddit we all know and love. 3 mathematicians walk into a bar. The barman says, do you all want a beer? First one says, I don't know. Second one says, I don't know. Third one says yes. I like that, that's a lot more clever than I realized at first. 3 logicians. The one with mathematicians is a bit different. An infinite number of mathematicians walk into a bar. The first asks for a beer, the second asks for half a beer, the third for a quarter beer, and so on. After a while the bartender gets bored and says, I'll just give you all 2 beers. You guys should know your limits. A guy stops into a bar after work. The bar is situated on the 3rd floor. He sits down at the bar next to another dude and orders a drink. After a few minutes, the other dude drains his glass, stands up and just runs and jumps out the window. The man is left speechless, but 2 minutes later the other dude walks back in the door and sits back down at the bar as if nothing has happened. The man is too confused to ask about what just happened, so he just continues sipping his drink. A few minutes later, the other dude drains his glass again, and proceeds to run and jump out the window again, and then stroll back through the door, sit back down and order another drink. So the guy says screw it to himself, necks his drink, and runs and jumps right out the window. The bartender turns to the other dude and says, you're a real prick when you're drunk, Superman. Superman's flying along one day when he sees Wonder Woman lying naked in her back garden. He thinks nobody will ever know, flies down, shags her at super speed, and is gone in an instant. That was weird. What happened there? Asked Wonder Woman. I dunno, said the Invisible Man, but it hurt. That's fucking great, ha 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 ha. I bought shoes from a drug dealer. I don't know what he laced them with, but I've been tripping all day. I was told this jokes by a senior during my first day of freshman year in HS. Dude just walked up to me and offered it like a piece of advice to an anxious freshie. Don't ever buy shoes from a drug dealer, and here's why LMFAO. It takes a while to kick in. I took the shell off my racing snail to make it go faster. If anything, it just made it more sluggish. I had a racing snail. Well, it raced cars actually. Drove a little car with an S on it, for snail, and it was wicked fast. People would see it take off and go, wow, look at that South Carolina go. What do you call an indecisive bee? A maybe. What kind of bees make milk? Boobies. What do you call an American bee? A USB. What's the difference between USA and USB? One connects to all of your devices and transfers data in real time, while the other is an electronic cable standard. It's kind of a long one but a good one. One day, St. Peter was manning his station at the pearly gates of heaven, denying or allowing people to enter heaven. Eventually, a guy comes up and starts talking to Peter, and Peter says, "Tell me about the day you died." The guy says, "Man, it was terrible. I got off work early to try and catch my wife cheating on me, as I'd expected she was. Well, I got home to my 14th floor apartment and found my wife naked, wet, and in bed. Obviously, she had just been having sex. So I searched all over my 14th floor apartment and couldn't find anyone, so I decided to have a cigarette on my balcony. Lo and behold, I looked down and saw a naked man hanging by his fingertips, and in a rage, I grabbed a hammer and smashed his fingers. Lucky for him, he landed in some bushes and started to scramble out of them. So I went and pushed my fridge off the edge. It landed on him and killed him. But the act gave me a heart attack, and I died." Peter let the man in and asked the next guy, "Tell me about the day you died." The second man said, "Man, it was awful. I was in my 15th floor apartment doing acrobatics, but see, I have a better range of motion if I'm naked when I do my acrobatics, but I misjudged a jump and fell out my window and off my balcony. Luckily, I caught myself with just my fingertips on the 14th floor apartment balcony. But then some crazy bastard came out and smashed my fingers with a hammer. I managed to land in some bushes, but as I was trying to get out of the bushes, the mad lad dropped a fridge on me, and I died." Peter chuckles to himself and allows the man entry. Then Peter turns to the next man and says, "Tell me about the day you died." The third man says, "Okay, so get this, I'm hiding in a fridge." My favorite part of this joke had always been the absurdity of one man casually throwing a fridge out the window. Not that casual, he clearly overexerted himself. What do you call a dog with no legs? You don't call it, you go get it. It doesn't matter, it won't come anyway. My dog has no nose, how does he smell? Terrible. Cigarette, because every night you take it out for a drag. 3 men, 1 British, 1 Japanese, and 1 American are trekking through the jungle when they're suddenly captured by a tribe of cannibals. They are brought to the chief, who tells them, "We are going to kill you, eat you, and use your skin to make our canoes. However, we will allow you to choose how you die." The Englishman asks for his gun and a single bullet. He loads it, points it at his head, and says, "God save the Queen." Bang! The Japanese man asks for his sword. They give him his sword, he says, "For honor." Before committing harakiri. The American asks for a fork. They give him a fork, and he starts going to town on himself, stabbing himself all over his arms, his legs, his torso. He's bleeding like crazy, but he's not dying quickly. Finally the chief asks what he's doing. The American looks him in the eye and yells, "Fuck your canoes. I choose to die of old age. I hope your boat sinks." A photon walks into a hotel and the concierge comes up and says, "May I take your bags, sir?" The photon replies, "No, I'm traveling light." 2 atoms were walking down the road and the one atom suddenly stopped, patted his pockets and exclaimed, "Hold on, I think I've lost an electron." The second atom says, "Are you sure?" To which the first atom replies, "I'm positive." The barman says, "Sorry, we don't serve faster than light particles in here." A tachyon walks into a bar. Not original by any means, but still a classic. Some of you may be more familiar with the racist version. So 3 guys get stranded out on an island and captured by a cannibal tribe. Not wanting to die, they beg and plead with the tribe's king to let them go. The king tells them that there are 2 ways to earn their freedom and escape back home. The first is to fight their toughest tribe member gladiator style, while the second is a mystery challenge. Desperate and with nothing to lose, all 3 men agree to the mystery challenge. So the king says to the 3 men, "Go into the jungle and collect 10 of any single type of fruit. When you're done, bring them to me." The 3 men enter the jungle to go on their fruit hunt. The first man comes back, proudly carrying a stack of 10 bananas. He presents them to the king, hoping he'll be pleased. But the king declines and tells him the real point of the challenge: it's not over yet. You are to insert all 10 of the fruits in your anus. If you wince in pain, laugh, cry, or show any other emotion, we will throw you into the boiling pot. The man hesitates, but proceeds to insert the 10 bananas up his anus. 1, 2, but the tearing of his anal cavity is too painful and he cries out of agony. The cannibals throw him into the pot. The second returns, and luckily picks cherries. The king tells him to do the same task, as well as the fate that came across Banana Man. The second guy is happy because he is certain he can insert all the cherries in because of their small size. So he proceeds to insert the cherries with ease. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but he bursts out laughing, causing the cannibals to also throw him into the pot. In heaven, the first and second guy meet and discuss their unbelievable misfortune. Halfway through the conversation, the first guy says to the second guy, "I was watching you from up here and I saw that you nearly completed the task, but all of a sudden you laughed. Why?" The which the second guy replies, "I couldn't help it, I saw the third guy bringing pineapples."